The rain had been falling for hours, a cold, unkind drizzle that painted the city in shades of gray. Street lights flickered like tired fireflies, reflecting off puddles that swallowed the light. On a quiet corner near a closed bakery, a little girl no older than 10 sat under a broken awning. Her thin dress clung to her small frame, her bare feet trembling against the wet pavement. In her hands, she held a torn paper cup, the kind that once carried coffee, now her only hope for warmth. "Please, sir," she whispered as footsteps approached, "just a piece of bread for my brother." People passed without slowing down. Some didn't hear her, others pretended not to. A woman pulled her coat tighter. A man looked away. The city was full of noise, but her voice, soft and fragile, drowned beneath it. Her name was Lila. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. Beside her, under a cardboard box covered in plastic, her younger brother Noah slept, coughing in his sleep. His face was pale, his lips cracked. Every sound he made twisted her heart tighter. A bakery smell drifted through the air, warm, buttery, impossible to ignore. She could almost taste the bread she couldn't have. Hunger had a cool way of reminding her she was alive. Lila looked up as a car passed, splashing water across the sidewalk. Her eyes, once bright, were dimmed by exhaustion but still carried something rare, hope. She believed that maybe, just maybe, someone kind would stop today. Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads. The city lights blurred as the rain thickened. Lila pulled Noah's little blanket tighter around him, humming the lullaby her mother used to sing, before everything fell apart. Their parent had vanished from their world 6 months ago. First, their mother's illness, quick and merciless. Then their father's grief, which led him down paths darker than poverty. One morning, he left, saying he'd return with food. He never did. Since then, Lila had learned what survival meant. She learned which corners were safest, which bins sometimes had half-eaten bread, and which police officers turned a blind eye. But even survival had limits. Winter was crueler this year. As dawn struggled to break through the clouds, the bakery door opened. The owner, a tired man in his 50s, stepped out with a bag of leftovers. Lila's heart jumped. She rushed forward, her little hands clasped together. "Please, sir, just a piece. For my brother." He looked at her, sighed, then tossed the bag into the trash bin beside him. "Can't give it out. Kid. Rules," he muttered before locking the door. Her throat tightened, but she didn't cry. She had cried enough to know tears changed nothing. She walked to the bin, reaching carefully for the bag. Inside, the bread was still warm, still good, but as she reached in, another hand grabbed it first. A tall teenage boy, maybe 17, smirked down at her. Finders keepers. "Please," she said softly. "He's sick. It's for my brother." He shrugged, tearing a piece and eating it right in front of her. Then he threw the rest back into the trash, laughed, and walked away. Lila stood still, trembling. The smell of the bread was unbearable now. She knelt beside the bin, retrieving the piece he threw back, brushing off the dirt. She broke it in half and held one half close to her chest. "For you, Noah," she whispered, turning toward the alley. Behind her, the sound of an engine purred, soft, expensive, out of place. A black luxury car slowed to a stop near the corner. The tinted window rolled down, revealing a man in his early 30s. Clean suit, calm face, the kind of man the world called successful. He had been watching her for minutes, maybe longer. Something about the way she shielded her brother from rain had held him there, silent. He had seen poverty before, but never like this. He lowered the window further. "Hey," he said gently. "Are you okay?" Lila froze. People usually ignored her. No one asked if she was okay. She turned slowly, clutching the bread. Her eyes met his, cautious, unsure. "We're fine, sir." He looked at Noah under the cardboard. His brow furrowed. "That's your brother." She nodded. "What's your name?" "Lila." The man paused, something shifting behind his calm expression. "Lila," he repeated softly. "I'm Ethan." He stepped out of the car, rain soaking his shoulders instantly. "Let me help," he said, reaching into his coat. But Lila stepped back, shaking her head. "You don't have to. We're fine." Her voice cracked on the last word. Ethan looked down at the soggy piece of bread in her hand, then at the child sleeping beneath plastic. His chest tightened with something he hadn't felt in years, empathy that demanded action. Still, he knew he had to move carefully. People like her had learned not to trust easily. He crouched to her eye level, speaking softly. "I won't take anything from you. Just let me buy you both some food. Real food. Warm food." Lila hesitated. Hunger and fear wrestled in her eyes. The last time someone offered help, they had tricked her, but something about Ethan felt different. Calm, patient, safe. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked down at her brother, then back up at the stranger whose shoes were splattered with city mud but whose voice sounded like warmth itself. "Please," he said again, his tone gentler now. "Let me help." The rain fell harder, like the sky urging her to say yes. And after a moment that felt endless, she finally whispered, "Okay." Ethan smiled softly, relief flickering in his eyes. "All right," he said, standing and brushing off his coat. "There's a diner around the corner. We'll get something warm." Lila gently shook Noah awake. His eyelids fluttered open, confusion clouding his pale face. "Lila, is it morning?" "Almost," she said, forcing a smile. "We're going to eat now." "Okay." When he saw Ethan, his small body stiffened. "Who's that?" "It's okay," Lila whispered. "He's helping us." Ethan walked ahead, hands tucked into his pockets, slowing his pace so the children could follow. The street smelled of rain and fresh coffee now. For the first time in days, Lila felt the faint warmth of hope. Inside the diner, golden lights hummed softly. The waitress raised an eyebrow when she saw them. The contrast between Ethan's press suit and the two children in soaked clothes was striking. But Ethan didn't seem to care. "Table for 3, he said firmly. As they sat, Noah's eyes darted to the plates being carried to other tables. Steaming pancakes, eggs glistening with butter, toast dripping with jam. His stomach growled audibly. Ethan smiled. "Order whatever you like." Lila hesitated, scanning the menu she could barely read. "Just bread, please." Ethan blinked. "Bread." She nodded shyly. "We don't want to waste your money." He felt something twist deep inside. "It's not a waste," he said gently. "Get what you want. Anything." Noah whispered, "Can I have pancakes?" Ethan grinned. "Pancakes it is." When the food arrived, Lila stared for a long time before touching it. She tore a piece of pancake, handed it to Noah first, and only then took a bite herself. Ethan watched in silence. The way she protected her brother reminded him of his own past, memories he had long buried. He had grown up with a single mother in a neighborhood not much different from theirs. Back then, every coin mattered. He had promised himself that if he ever made it big, he'd help kids like him. Yet somewhere along the climb to success, that promise had faded. Until tonight. "Do you have somewhere to stay?" he asked quietly. Lila shook her head. "We used to, but the landlord locked the door. Said Mama hadn't paid rent. We've been sleeping outside." Ethan exhaled slowly, his throat tightening. "How long?" "A few weeks." The waitress returned with a small smile, refilling their cups with hot chocolate. Lila cupped her hands around hers, savoring the heat. It was the first time in months she'd felt her fingers again. "Do you go to school?" Ethan asked. Lila looked down. "Not anymore." He nodded slowly, not pressing further. The rain outside had stopped. Through the fogged window, the city looked softer somehow. Ethan checked his watch, nearly midnight, but he didn't move. Something about leaving them there felt wrong. Noah leaned against his sister, dozing off, crumbs dotting his shirt. Lila brushed his hair aside gently. "Thank you, sir," she murmured. "We'll go now." Ethan frowned. "Go? Where?" She shrugged. "Back to the alley. It's dry now." His jaw clenched. "No, you're not going back there." She looked up, startled. "But—" He softened his voice. "You'll stay somewhere safe tonight. I'll take care of it." Lila's eyes darted between him and Noah. Why are you helping us? Ethan paused, his gaze drifting toward the window. The reflection of the city lights shimmered on the glass like fragments of his own memory. Because once, he said quietly, someone helped me when no one else would. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Right, yes, and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. Ethan drove them to a nearby hotel, modest, clean, quiet. The receptionist looked hesitant when she saw the two small figures beside him. Ethan handed over his card without a word. 1 night, 2 beds, he said firmly. Inside the room, the children stared in disbelief. The soft beds, the clean sheets, it felt like another world. Can we really sleep here? Noah whispered. Ethan smiled. Yes, you deserve rest. As Noah curled up under the blanket, Lila stood by the window, staring at the city lights. She felt both grateful and uneasy. The kindness felt unreal, too sudden, like a dream she might wake from any second. Ethan noticed her silence. You can trust me, he said softly. She nodded but didn't turn around. People say that, she murmured, before they don't mean it. Her words cut deeper than she realized. Ethan stepped closer but kept his distance. I mean it, he said simply. There was something in his tone, not pity, but truth. Lila wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe in people again. When Noah's breathing slowed into sleep, she finally looked at Ethan. You should go home, sir. You've done enough. Ethan smiled faintly. I will, but I'll be back in the morning, all right? She hesitated, then whispered, Okay. He nodded, pulling the door closed quietly behind him. Outside, the night air felt different, fresher somehow. For the first time in years, Ethan felt like he had done something that actually mattered. He didn't know yet that this simple act, stopping for a homeless girl in the rain, was about to change both their lives forever. Morning sunlight seeped through the thin curtains, painting soft gold across the hotel room. The rain was gone, leaving behind the calm hum of early traffic. Lila blinked awake, momentarily disoriented by the white sheets and warmth around her. For a second, she forgot she was homeless. Then she remembered the stranger, the food, the bed that didn't smell of cold concrete. She turned to see Noah sleeping peacefully beside her. For the first time in weeks, his face looked calm, free from shivers and coughs. Her heart softened. Thank you, she whispered into the quiet room, unsure if she was talking to Ethan or to God. The door knocked gently. Lila's small body stiffened before she heard his voice. Lila, it's me. Ethan stepped in with a paper bag in one hand and a warm smile on his face. Breakfast. The smell of eggs and toast filled the room instantly. Noah stirred awake, rubbing his eyes. Good morning, mister. Good morning, champ, Ethan said, setting the food down on the table. Lila helped Noah sit up, and the boy smiled faintly before biting into a piece of toast. Watching him eat felt like a miracle. You both sleep well? Ethan asked. Lila nodded slowly. It was the best sleep we've had. That's good, he said, smiling. Listen, I don't want to pry, but I'd like to help a bit more. Maybe find a place for you to stay longer. Just until things get better. Lila's eyes widened. You don't have to do that. We'll be fine. You've done enough. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Lila, do you have any family at all? Someone who might take you in. She hesitated. Grandma, but she's far. I don't know where she lives now. He nodded slowly. What about your father? Her expression changed. The light in her eyes dimmed. He left. Ethan paused. Do you know why? She shrugged, her voice quiet. He couldn't take it when Mama died. Said he'd come back. He never did. Noah looked down, whispering, but he will. Lila says he will. Ethan's chest ached at the boy's innocence. Maybe he will, he said softly, not daring to crush the hope that kept them going. After breakfast, Ethan called the front desk, extending the room for another night. Just to give us time, he told them. He had an idea forming, not just charity, but a solution, something lasting. He spent the day making calls, to an old friend who ran a shelter, to another who worked in child welfare. By evening, He returned to the hotel with a small box of clothes and a quiet smile. "These are for you," he said, setting the box on the bed. "They might be a little big, but they are clean and warm." Lila touched the sweater on top, her fingers trembling slightly. "You bought these?" He shook his head. "No. Someone owed me a favor. They'll fit better once you eat properly." Noah grinned, holding up a red hoodie that nearly swallowed him whole. "I love it." Lila smiled for the first time, a small, fragile smile that reached her eyes. Ethan caught it and felt something unfamiliar stir within him, pride mixed with something deeper. Later, they walked to a nearby park. The air smelled of wet grass and blooming flowers. Children ran around, laughing, their sneakers splashing through puddles. Noah watched them with longing. "Go play," Ethan said gently. Noah hesitated. "Can I?" "Of course." The boy ran off, laughter spilling into the air like sunlight. Lila stood beside Ethan, her arms folded. "He hasn't played in a long time," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "He deserves to." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Lila glanced at him. "Why are you really doing this?" Ethan looked out at the park, the laughter, the world that seemed so unaware of the two small souls who had been fighting to survive in its shadows. "Because I remember what it felt like," he said, "to be invisible." "Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." As the day faded into dusk, Ethan drove them to a modest apartment building in the quieter part of town. "A friend runs this place," he explained. "It's safe, and you can stay here for a while." Lila looked at the building's pale walls, the small garden out front, the laughter of kids echoing faintly from somewhere inside. It didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a beginning. Inside, the manager, a kind woman named Grace, greeted them warmly. "These must be the kids," she said. "You did the right thing, Ethan." Grace led Lila and Noah to a small room, simple, clean, with 2 beds and sunlight spilling through lace curtains. Lila turned around, eyes wide. "We can stay here." Grace smiled. "As long as you need." Tears welled up in Lila's eyes. She blinked them away, whispering, "Thank you." Ethan stood by the doorway, his heart full. For the first time in years, his success felt useful. As he turned to leave, Noah ran up and hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Mr." Ethan froze, caught off guard by the small arms around his waist. Slowly, he placed a hand on the boy's back. "You're welcome, buddy." Lila stood behind, watching quietly. She didn't say a word, but her eyes, full of gratitude and disbelief, said everything. As Ethan stepped outside into the cooling evening, he looked up at the fading sky. He didn't know it yet, but this act of kindness would soon uncover a truth that would tie his past and Lila's in ways he never imagined. The next few days passed in quiet rhythm. For the first time in months, Lila and Noah had walls that didn't leak when it rained, food that didn't come from a trash bin, and nights without fear. Grace checked on them every morning, making sure they ate, bathed, and rested. She even found an old set of storybooks for Noah and a notebook for Lila. Ethan visited often, bringing groceries or small treats, a bag of apples, a box of crayons, sometimes a movie to watch together in the common lounge. But every time he came, he noticed something about Lila. She smiled politely, said thank you, and kept a small piece of distance. It wasn't mistrust anymore. It was something quieter, almost like guilt. One evening, when the sky turned violet and the smell of rain returned, Ethan found Lila sitting on the front steps of the shelter. Noah was asleep inside, and she sat there alone, holding the small notebook. "Can't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "I was thinking." He sat beside her. "About what?" "About Mama," she said softly. "She used to say the world has both good people and bad, but the bad ones shout louder, so sometimes it feels like they're the only ones left." Ethan listened, his gaze on the darkening street. "Your mother sounds wise." "She was," Lila said. "She told me to be kind, even when the world isn't." He smiled faintly. "She raised you well." There was a long pause. The streetlight above them buzzed faintly. Finally, Lila whispered, Ethan, do you ever feel like you don't deserve to be happy? The question struck him harder than she knew. For a moment, he said nothing. Sometimes, he admitted, when I think of the people I couldn't help or the chances I wasted. Yeah. She nodded, eyes glistening. I feel that way all the time. He turned to her, his voice low but firm. You've done nothing wrong, Lila. Surviving isn't something to be ashamed of. Her lip trembled, but she forced a small smile. You make it sound easy. I know it's not, he said softly. But you're here now. That means you made it through the hardest part. She looked away, blinking fast. Maybe. For a long while, they just sat there in silence, listening to the distant hum of the city. The world felt slower, softer, as if pausing to let them breathe. Inside, Grace watched through the window, smiling faintly. She hadn't seen Ethan like this in years. There was something different about how he looked at Lila and Noah, not just as a man doing charity, but as someone rediscovering pieces of himself through them. Later that night, Ethan returned to his apartment, a modern penthouse with glass walls and silence so thick it echoed. He poured himself a cup of coffee, but it tasted like nothing. The usual comfort of luxury felt hollow now. He walked to his office corner and opened an old wooden drawer he hadn't touched in years. Inside was a faded photograph, a woman with soft eyes holding a baby wrapped in blue. His mother. He hadn't seen her since he left home at 16, chasing ambition after years of struggle. He traced the edge of the photo. You like her, Mom, he thought. That girl from the shelter. She reminds me of you, gentle, too strong for her own good. He didn't know why, but something about Lila's eyes had haunted him since the first night. There was something familiar there, something that didn't feel like coincidence. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. The next day, Ethan arrived early at the shelter with breakfast. Grace greeted him with a knowing smile. You're becoming part of the furniture here, she teased. He chuckled. Guess I just like the company. Or maybe, Grace said, lowering her voice, you see something of yourself in that girl. He paused, her words lingering in the air longer than they should. Maybe, he admitted. When he stepped into the small dining area, Noah was already there, giggling over a coloring book. Ethan, look, he shouted, showing a drawing of 3 stick figures, a girl, a boy, and a tall man with brown hair. That's you. Ethan laughed. You made me taller than I am. No, Noah said seriously. You're big, like a hero. The words hit him harder than they should have. A hero. He hadn't thought of himself as one in a long, long time. Lila entered quietly, brushing her hair behind her ear. Sorry, he gets excited, she said. Ethan smiled. Don't apologize. He should be excited. She nodded shyly, sitting down. As they ate, Ethan noticed the way she glanced at the door now and then, as if expecting someone. You're waiting for him, aren't you? He asked gently. She froze. Who? Your father. Her fork stilled midday. He said he'd come back, she whispered. Maybe he just can't find us. Ethan wanted to believe that too, for her sake. But something in his chest tightened, a quiet dread he couldn't explain. Grace entered with the mail, placing a small brown envelope on the table. This came for you, Ethan. It was forwarded from your office. He nodded, setting it aside. But later, as Lila and Noah ran outside to play, curiosity made him open it. Inside was a letter, a name written in trembling handwriting that made his pulse skip. It read, from Daniel Cooper. Ethan froze. The name carved itself into his mind like a wound reopened. Daniel Cooper, the man who'd abandoned him and his mother years ago. His father. But what was his father doing writing now? And why did the letter mention 2 children living on the streets? His eyes darted to the window, where Lila and Noah played in the sun. His breath caught in his throat. Ethan's fingers tightened around the letter. His pulse thundered in his ears as he reread every line, slowly, carefully, as if the meaning might change. If you ever read this, son, I know I've failed more than word can forgive. There's a girl and a boy out there. They're your half-siblings. Their mother, she's gone, and I can't take care of them anymore. I'm not proud of what I've done. But I'm begging you, please find them before it's too late. Ethan's eyes blurred. The words girl and boy echoed like a storm in his chest. No, it couldn't be. It couldn't. He folded the letter slowly, his hands trembling. Outside the window, sunlight danced across the grass, when Noah chased a paper airplane and Lila laughed, a rare, unguarded laugh that melted into the wind. The world felt like it had tilted. He stepped outside, his face pale but composed. Lila waved when she saw him. Ethan, Noah made it fly. He forced a smile. I see that. But as he watched her brown hair, her faint dimple when she smiled, the same shade of eyes that used to stare back at him from a mirror when he was young, the truth began to feel less impossible. He swallowed hard. Half-siblings. Could it be true? Later that evening, when Grace took the children inside for dinner, Ethan stayed behind, the letter clutched in his hand. The weight of it felt unbearable. He called an old contact from the adoption registry, someone who owed him a favor from years ago. I need you to run a name, he said. Lila and Noah Cooper. Mother deceased. Father, Daniel Cooper. The man on the other end hesitated. Daniel Cooper? Ethan, that name's. I know, Ethan interrupted, his voice low. Just find what you can. When he hung up, the city light began to flicker on. The night carried a heavy silence, one that felt like it knew too much. Hours later, the call came back. Ethan, his contact said quietly, I don't know how to tell you this, but the records match. The children are listed under Daniel Cooper. Birth certificates confirm it. Ethan closed his eyes, his throat dry. Thank you, he whispered. He sat there for a long time, the truth echoing in his mind. They are my family, Lila and Noah. The kids he'd found by chance, or maybe not by chance at all. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. His mind replayed everything. The first time he saw Lila shivering in the rain, Noah's laughter in the park, Lila's words about their father. He said he'd come back. He had come back, just not in the way they imagined. By morning, he made a decision. The truth couldn't stay hidden. But he didn't know how to tell them, how to explain that the man who abandoned them was the same man who had once abandoned him. When he arrived at the shelter, Grace noticed a look on his face. What's wrong? She asked softly. He hesitated, holding out the letter. This. It changes everything. Grace read silently, her brows knitting as she reached the end. Oh, Ethan, she whispered. You mean? He nodded slowly. They are my brother and sister. She exhaled deeply. What will you do? I don't know, he admitted. They've already lost so much. I don't want to hurt them again. Grace placed a hand on his arm. Then tell them the truth, gently. They deserve that much. Ethan nodded. After dinner, he said quietly, when Noah's asleep. That evening, Lila helped Grace wash dishes while Noah built a fort with blankets and chairs in the corner. Ethan sat nearby, heart pounding, waiting for the right moment. When Noah finally drifted off, Lila sat across from him, her face glowing under the warm light. You look worried, she said. Is everything okay? Ethan hesitated. He could hear the ticking of the clock, each second stretching longer than it should. Lila, he began softly, I need to tell you something important. She tilted her head, sensing the weight in his tone. He took a deep breath. Do you remember your father's name? Her expression dimmed instantly. Yes, she whispered. Daniel Cooper. Why? Ethan's voice trembled despite his efforts. Because I knew him. Her eyes widened. You knew my father. He nodded slowly, pain flickering behind his eyes. He was my father, too. For a moment, silence filled the room. Only the sound of Noah's quiet breathing could be heard. Lila blinked, confusion clouding her face. I don't understand. Ethan leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. We share the same father, Lila. You and Noah, you're my family. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked at him as if he'd just spoken a language she'd never heard before. No, she said faintly. That's not possible. I wish it wasn't, he said, voice breaking. But it's true. He left me, 2 years ago. I didn't even know about you until I got this letter. She stared at the folded paper on the table, her eyes darting between the ink in his trembling hands. The truth hung heavy, suffocating. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. So, all this time, you helped us because... Because I saw myself in you, he interrupted gently. And because I had no idea I was helping my own blood. Tears welled in her eyes. She stood abruptly, knocking the chair back. You should have told me sooner. I just found out. Her breath hitched. The air in the room turned sharp, full of everything unsaid. Grief, confusion, a love too new to be trusted. Without another word, she turned and ran into the night. Ethan called her name, but the door had already slammed. Outside, rain had started again. The rain poured harder now, drenching the streets with cold urgency. Lila ran blindly through it, her breath sharp and uneven. The water soaked her thin sweater, plastering her hair to her face. But she didn't care. Everything inside her, fear, grief, betrayal, burned louder than the storm around her. Her footsteps echoed down the empty alley, the same one where Ethan had found her that night. The irony clawed at her. Here again, she thought bitterly. Always here. She collapsed beside the same broken awning, pulling her knees to her chest. The city had moved on, but she felt stuck, like the world had spun forward and left her behind. Inside the shelter, Ethan stood frozen near the door, the sound of the rain searing through him. Grace approached slowly, her face drawn. She'll come back, she said gently. I shouldn't have told her like that, he muttered. I should have waited. Grace shook her head. There's no good way to tell a child her life has changed again. You told her because it was right. He raked a hand through his hair, his voice breaking. Right doesn't feel right. He grabbed his coat and ran out into the storm. The streets blurred beneath the rain. Every corner looked the same. Every puddle carried a reflection for a moment before shattering. Then, through the dim orange of a flickering streetlight, he saw her, a small figure, shivering, sitting just where she used to beg. He slowed his pace, cautious not to scare her. Lila, he called softly. She didn't move. Her shoulders shook, but whether from cold or tears, he couldn't tell. Please, he said, stepping closer. Let's talk. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. You lied to me. I didn't know. Lila, he said, his voice raw. I swear I didn't. I found out yesterday. She looked up at him, her eyes red, cheeks glistening with rain. You said you wanted to help us. Not because of pity, not because of guilt. But now it feels like that's all it was. He shook his head fiercely. No, it wasn't. He dropped to his knees before her, his voice trembling. I helped you because you reminded me of hope. You reminded me of her, of Mom. I didn't know you were my sister then, but I loved you like one before I even knew. Her breath hitched. His words cracked open something inside her, a place between pain and belief. You left your family once, she whispered. How do I know you won't leave again? Rain slid down his face like penance. Because I've spent my whole life running from that mistake, he said, and I'm done running now. Lila looked away, watching water ripple down the gutter. Our father, her voice faltered. He said he'd come back. I waited for him every night. Ethan's throat tightened. I waited too, he said softly, but he never did, and I hated him for it. Until tonight, I realized maybe I was supposed to find you instead. The words broke her. She covered her face, sobbing quietly. Ethan reached out, hesitating for just a heartbeat, then pulled her into his arms. She didn't resist. They stayed there, two broken souls clinging to each other in the storm, the same rain that had once separated them now washing them back together. When they finally stood, Ethan guided her gently toward the car. She didn't speak, but her silence no longer screamed of anger, just exhaustion. Inside the shelter, Grace wrapped Lila in a blanket and handed her a cup of tea. Noah, still half asleep, stirred in his bed, mumbling her name. She brushed his hair and kissed his forehead. Ethan watched from the doorway, guilt etched into every line of his face. Grace walked over and whispered, She'll heal. You both will. He nodded weakly. If she lets me. She will, Grace said with quiet certainty. She just needed to cry in the place where she once begged to live. Closure comes in strange ways. Ethan leaned against the wall, staring out the rain-streaked window. He ruined so many lives. He murmured, Mom, me, and now them. Grace sighed. Maybe. But maybe you were meant to be the one who ends it, the one who breaks the cycle. Her words lingered in his heart long after she walked away. If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. The next morning was clear, crisp, new. The city looked almost gentle under sunrise. Lila awoke to the smell of pancakes again, but this time Ethan wasn't sitting at the table. Instead, a small note lay folded beside her cup. I'll be back later. I need to see someone. Someone I've avoided for too long. Her heart tightened. She knew who he meant. Ethan drove for hours, out past the city into a quiet town surrounded by trees. He parked outside a small cemetery, the wind brushing through the leaves. He walked to a grave he hadn't visited in years. Margaret Reed, the woman who had raised him alone, who had forgiven the man who never deserved it. He placed flowers at her headstone, his voice trembling. I found them, Mom. The kids he left behind. They're good. They're kind. You'd love them. The wind whispered through the branches like her voice, soft and forgiving. I'll take care of them, he said, his words barely audible. I'll do what he never did for us. He stood there until the light began to fade, the weight in his chest slowly turning into something quieter. Not peace yet, but purpose. When Ethan returned to the city that evening, the air felt lighter. The storm had rinsed away the heaviness in the streets, and the scent of rain still lingered like a promise. He parked near the shelter, his mind replaying every word he'd said to his mother's grave. Inside, laughter drifted faintly from the common room, a sound that wrapped around him like warmth. As he stepped in, he saw Lila and Noah sitting at a small table, drawing with colored pencils. Grace sat nearby, knitting quietly, her eyes lifting toward him with a small smile. Lila noticed him too. Her pencil paused midline. The silence that followed wasn't cold, just careful. Ethan approached slowly, unsure if he was still welcome in their little world. Hi, he said softly. Noah jumped up instantly. Ethan, he shouted, running to him. We made you something. Ethan knelt as Noah handed him a folded piece of paper. Inside was a crayon drawing, a stick man, a girl, a boy, and a son. Above them, in crooked letters, were the words, Our Family. Ethan's throat tightened. This is beautiful, he said, smiling through the ache in his chest. Lila looked down at her page, tracing the same line over and over. Noah wanted to make that, she murmured. Ethan nodded, still kneeling. He has good taste. Grace excused herself quietly, leaving the three of them alone. The sound of her footsteps faded into the hall, replaced by the soft scratching of rain against the window. Ethan turned toward Lila, his tone gentle. Can we talk? She hesitated, then nodded slowly. They stepped outside to the front porch, where the air was cool but calm. Streetlights cast warm circles across the damp pavement. For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them was fragile but not hostile, like glass that might hold if touched carefully. I went to see our mother today, Ethan finally said. Lila's eyes widened. You're... Our mother, he corrected softly. She's gone, but I wanted her to know I found you. Both of you. Lila looked away, her voice trembling. I still don't know what to do with all this. You say we're family, but I barely know you. I know, he said quietly, and I don't expect you to trust me overnight, but I want to earn it. She studied his face, the sincerity in his eyes, the exhaustion, the regret. Why does it hurt so much to believe you? She whispered. Because people you trusted before broke that part of you, he said. But I'm not them, Lila. I won't disappear. A tear slipped down her cheek. Do you promise? I promise. She nodded slowly, not in full belief yet, but in the first flicker of wanting to. From the window, Noah watched them, his small hand pressed to the glass, a smile lighting his face. To him, it already felt right, like their little world was finally starting to fit. Ethan exhaled, glancing toward the sky. Tomorrow, I'll take you both somewhere special. Somewhere Mom used to take me. Lila frowned. Where? He smiled faintly. You'll see. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, I felt you. The next morning dawned bright and cool. Ethan picked them up early, a picnic basket in the back seat. Lila sat in the front this time, Noah in the back with his toy plane. The car hummed softly along the open road. After about an hour, the city gave way to rolling fields, the horizon wide and golden. Where are we going? Noah asked, his nose pressed to the window. Ethan smiled. A place called Crescent Hill. Mom and I used to come here when things were hard. She said the wind on that hill could carry away bad memories. When they arrived, the hill stretched endlessly beneath a sky so blue it felt painted. The grass shimmered with dew. They climbed slowly, Noah running ahead, Lila following behind, and Ethan carrying the basket. At the top, the world seemed to pause. The city was just a blur in the distance. The only sound was a wind whispering through the wildflowers. This is beautiful, Lila said softly. Ethan nodded. It's where I used to dream about better days. Now I think this is what she meant. Not just hope for yourself, but for someone else too. Lila knelt, brushing her fingers through the grass. I wish Mama could see this. I think she can, Ethan said quietly. Maybe that's what faith really is, believing the people we lose are still watching when we do something good. She looked up at him, and for the first time since she learned the truth, she smiled. Not the polite smile she used to give, but a real one, small, trembling, alive. Noah called from a few feet away, waving wildly. Come see the flowers. They walked toward him, the sunlight warming their faces. For a fleeting second, it felt as if the world had forgiven them, both for the things they'd done and for the things they couldn't control. Ethan sat with them on the grass, the wind tugging softly at his coat. He looked at the two children beside him, one tracing circles in the soil, the other holding a wildflower, and felt something settle inside his chest, quiet and steady. For years, he had chased wealth to fill a void he didn't understand. But sitting there, with them, he realized the truth his mother had known all along. Some emptiness can only be healed by giving, not having. As the sun began to dip, Lila leaned against his shoulder. Do you think he ever regretted leaving us? She asked quietly. Ethan stared into the horizon. Maybe, but regret doesn't feed you, or warm you, or hold you when you're scared. We do that for each other now. Her fingers tightened around his sleeve. Then maybe that's enough. He smiled faintly. Yeah, maybe it is. The sun was melting into the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. The three of them sat together on the hill, the gentle wind playing with Lila's hair while Noah chased the last of the fireflies beginning to glow in the tall grass. The world had slowed down, softened somehow, like it was giving them permission to breathe again. Ethan leaned back on his hands, watching the children. Every laugh, every smile, every small spark of joy from them felt like a miracle stitched back into the fabric of a life that had once torn apart. Lila looked at him thoughtfully. Ethan, she said, her voice barely louder than the breeze, do you ever miss the old life? The one before all this? He glanced at her. Sometimes, he admitted, but I think I miss who I used to be in it more before I forgot what really mattered. She nodded slowly. When Mama was sick, she told me something. She said, kindness is the only thing you can give away that still grows inside you. I didn't understand it then. I think I do now. Ethan smiled softly, the words echoing deep in his chest. She was right. They sat in silence for a while, watching Noah twirl with his paper plane, his laughter rising into the orange light like music the earth had been waiting to hear again. The moment was perfect, fragile, fleeting, human. When it grew dark, they packed up and walked back to the car. Lila carried Noah, who had fallen asleep on her shoulder. Ethan took the basket, glancing at them as they walked. For the first time, he didn't see strangers he had rescued. He saw the family he was meant to find. The drive back was quiet. The hum of the engine and the sound of the night filled the spaces where words were no longer needed. At the shelter, Grace waited on the porch, smiling as a car pulled in. I was starting to think you'd never come back, she teased softly. Ethan chuckled. We got lost in the sunset. Grace helped carry Noah inside, while Lila lingered near the steps. The night air was cool against her skin. She turned toward Ethan, her eyes soft but thoughtful. Thank you, she whispered. Not just for today. For everything. He shook his head. Don't thank me. Lila, you gave me back something I didn't know I'd lost. What's that? She asked gently. Family. The word lingered between them, heavy and beautiful. Lila stepped forward, hesitated, then wrapped her arms around him. It wasn't a quick hug. It was a kind that spoke without words, full of forgiveness, pain, and something even stronger, belonging. When she pulled away, her voice cracked a little. You know, I think Mama would have liked you. Ethan smiled through the tightness in his throat. I hope so. Inside, Noah stirred on the couch, half asleep. Ethan, he murmured, are we going to stay together now? Ethan knelt beside him, brushing his hair gently. Yeah, buddy, he said softly. We're together now, and we'll stay that way. Noah smiled, already drifting back to dreams. Lila watched from the doorway, tears shining in her eyes, but this time they weren't from sadness. They were from release. If you believe love still wins, comment amen. Let's fill this world with hope. Someone out there might need that reminder tonight. Weeks passed. The city slowly bloomed into spring again, and life found its rhythm. Lila enrolled in school. Noah started attending a nearby daycare. Ethan made sure they never had to worry about food or warmth again, but he also gave them something money couldn't buy: presents. Every morning, he walked them to the corner where the bus stopped. Every evening, he sat at the table helping Lila with homework while Noah drew superheroes beside him. The walls of the small apartment they shared began to fill with laughter, the kind of sound that made the world outside feel a little kinder. One Sunday afternoon, they returned to Crescent Hill. Lila brought flowers this time, white lilies for their mother. She laid them gently in the grass and whispered, We're okay now. Ethan placed his hand on her shoulder. The wind stirred, brushing against their faces as if in quiet blessing. He looked at her and said softly, You know, sometimes we think the people we lose are gone forever. But maybe they just send us new people, ones who remind us we're still loved. Lila smiled faintly. Like you? He smiled back. Like us. The sun dipped low, and the hill glowed with gold. The three of them stood together, not bound by blood alone, but by something far stronger: choice, forgiveness, and love.